Bad North is a rogue-lite real-time strategy game, which basically means that it's a strategy game, but it also features randomized elements, in this case procedurally generated levels and a campaign map, and some level of permadeath, which means that as your characters die, you don't get them back, and you can actually lose the game pretty easily. I would describe it as something pretty close to a Total War game in structure, in that you have a turn-based overarching campaign map, and then once you select where you want to go with your armies, you zoom in on a real-time strategy battle. The difference is, as opposed to Total War, which is a very sprawling campaign map with grindy, long battles, Bad North features a really streamlined, almost linear campaign map and very quick but brutal combat. The overall premise of the story of Bad North is that you were driven from your home island by a Viking invasion, and I guess your father, who was the king, was killed, and you're off trying to flee the Vikings, and maybe someday you'll reclaim the throne. But I only know this because I read it on the game's store page. When you're actually playing the game, the only information you'll get is the single line, "This is your home," as applied to the first island that you're on. So it's really not a story-heavy game. You can kind of make some up and imply some for yourself if you're interested in that kind of thing as you're playing along with the various characters that you have in your army, but it's mostly just a strategy game. When you start a game of Bad North, you'll be thrown right into the first battle. Now, battles consist of your units defending an island from waves of Vikings. You'll typically have between 2 and 4 units at a time, and you're usually defending against, say 5 or 6 waves of Vikings. The round takes about 5 to 6 minutes, depending on how much you lean on the slow-mo. Now, what's the slow-mo? Well, the Vikings are always moving towards your island, but when you select a unit to order it what to do, time slows down. Things are still moving, but way slower, so you have a little bit of time to make decisions. Usually, how you defend against a wave is by waiting to see the Viking ships come out of the fog, and then you identify which of your units you want to place where on the island to defend against them. You'll set up to oppose the landing on the shore, and then watch to fight it out. A lot of times, though, you have to make some quick decisions during the battle to readjust your troops or bring reinforcements where they're needed to defend against the Vikings, and minimize how many casualties you're taking. In addition to just surviving, there are houses on every island that you're trying to stop from being pillaged by the Vikings. You get money at the end of every level to upgrade your troops based on the number of houses that survive. So you are obviously trying to keep as many of them safe as possible so that you can get better troops for later levels. Battle is quick and decisive, so you have to position your troops carefully, otherwise you'll be overrun before you know it. Commanding troops is about as simple as it gets. You just click on them and then click again to decide where they're going to go. Navigation is pretty straightforward as well. It's just a click and drag with the mouse, and it rotates and pans the camera. Once you win a battle, you go back to the campaign map, and you can then decide which island you're going to go fight on next. This is pretty railroady. There's not really much strategy as to going to this island versus that one, with a few exceptions. A couple of the islands have got items or new characters that you can pick up on them, and so generally you'll want to be pushing towards them. You always have to be pushing forward because a gray wall will prevent you from going back. So you're just basically trying to get to the end of the world. You can also upgrade your units. As you gain money from winning levels, you can specialize your troops from basic militiamen by turning them into either archers, pikemen, or swordsmen. Each one of these has a special ability and special tactics that you can use with them to make them most effective, but they all have downsides as well. You do have to make a fair number of decisions in the game, both on the strategy map and quickly during battle. And one of the flaws that I found is that there's not much of a tutorial for this. So when you're picking units to upgrade to a certain class or using a special ability, you won't really know how that ability is going to work until you go ahead and try it. This might be frustrating for some players, so until you've played the game enough to be comfortable with what the choices mean, know that you're probably going to pick the wrong thing for a given situation when you're first starting. The game has a lot of great detail to it that makes it feel full and fleshed out, even though it is very simple in concept. Each level has that unique terrain, which really does add quite a bit of strategy to the level. There's different ways you can go up and down between the cliffs or along narrow shelves between beaches that really change the way you set up to defend your islands. In addition, as you are gaining new unit types to defend with, the enemy is gaining new unit types to attack you with. So you'll start defending against sword Vikings and shield Vikings and archer Vikings, and eventually there were champion Vikings. So that kind of adds a little bit more to the game as well. You have to come up with unique strategies for how you'll deal with each type. There are also some neat combat details in the game. For example, when ships land on the shore and the Vikings jump off, if your troops are too close, they'll get knocked back. And shields, while they're very effective, are only able to defend against one threat at a time. So if somebody with a shield gets double teamed by, say, archers and infantry, they'll go down a lot quicker. Each unit also has special abilities that can be used during the game, aside from just moving and attacking, and items that you may find by traveling from island to island that you can use to swing the tide of battle in your favor very quickly. They can go to houses and replenish casualties that they've taken during the battle. And if everything seems lost and you think you're going to lose your favorite commander, you can have them flee the island in one of the Viking longboats that's landed and escape to live to fight another day. Just in general, the details of the world building are pretty cool too. The names of the islands are cool, and the characters have some neat thematic names. They kind of ooze the theme of the game. So I like that quite a bit. Graphically, I think the game looks pretty good. It's the kind of typical, simpler style that you'd expect from an indie game like this, but I think it works well. The color palette's pretty drab and uniform, a lot of greens and blues, but overall, I think it adds to the theme of the game. The islands look really neat. They've got some cool geometry to them, and they've got things like waterfalls and rock bridges and random buildings and piles of rocks that just they look good. You don't spend a whole lot of time in any one place, but they're kind of memorable in their own way. There's weather effects too, some rain and wind, which can kind of add, and everything, of course, is pretty foggy around the edges, which kind of adds to the tension of seeing the Vikings come out and not knowing what direction they're going to come from right away. Audio is kind of similar, same thing, pretty simple. There's a song for the campaign map, and there's a song for when you're in a battle, and just a couple other little sound effects musically in there in addition to that. The actual sound effects when the units are walking around and fighting and that kind of thing are kind of video gamey, kind of like oof and poof kind of stuff. But it actually works really well. The graphics of the combat are pretty brutal. There's a lot of blood spray and bodies and that kind of thing. So having a little bit goofier sound effects to go along with that keeps the tone, I think, where it needs to be for the game. One thing I can't not mention is that at least while I was playing it, there were a couple bugs. Actually, I was surprised by how many bugs I ran into given how polished the game otherwise seems. There was a problem I had a couple times, probably 2 or 3, where if I had a unit replenishing in a house and the house got destroyed, they just wouldn't leave the house, and so the battle would never end, and it would just sit there. I had at least one time I started it and just the screen was blank and nothing would load. And one time, and from my point of view, this might have been okay, I lost the battle, but I had one guy left who suddenly turned invincible, and he just ran around and couldn't be killed. So that was kind of weird too. Overall, none of the bugs really ruined the game for me, but like I said, it was a little surprising. I'd definitely be happy saying that I would recommend this game overall. It's looks really good and it feels pretty good to play. Despite the occasional bug, it's a good bit of fun. It's a difficult game. I was playing on the hard difficulty the whole time, and I never managed to beat it. So I'm definitely looking forward to continuing playing until I do. And you know, it's got some replayability to it because of the randomness. Some of the earlier levels are a little bit on the easy side, but if you split your troops and attack 2 islands in the same turn, or that kind of thing, it would still be really difficult. So yeah, I'd definitely have to say, for the game's merit alone, I would recommend it. It's a good bit of fun. For the price, I would say depends. You know, it's currently $15 at full price, and if you're looking at it and you're going, that looks like exactly the game that I want to play, then it's probably worth it for you to pick it up. Otherwise, I'd say wait for it to go on sale. If it gets down around $10 or so, maybe a little bit cheaper, hopefully, it'd be worth picking up. So yeah, Bad North. Bad North.